Nice to see you all. It's a great pleasure for me to speak to you today. My job is to try to look into the future and get an idea about the trends that will shape the economy and will change our world. And I'll be talking about 5 different trends that you've heard about now, these waves that are rolling through the world and changing the way we do our business. And I can only recommend that you go and have a look at the Wave exhibition. This is from when the exhibition opened in Paris last fall, and now it's been making its way around the world. And you can have a look at it. It's quite a beautiful exhibition. This was from when it was in Paris. As you just heard, there are 5 waves, and what they have in common, these waves, is that they're all about working together in new waves. We used to maybe be more alone. It's only our company, it's only my product, but now people are working together in completely different ways. And I'll give you some examples of this. This is a 3D printed prosthesis. It's for children who lack part of their hand or their arm. And it's been created by some scientists that are working together in a network all around the globe. So they came together and they wanted to create something that was cheap and easy to distribute to children who had no money around the world. So they created these very different kinds of prostheses. And you can see a young girl who has been fitted with an arm like this. It can be customized for every child. So this is an example of co-creation, that you have people around the world and they work together in a way that gathers information from around the world that could not maybe be in one place. So it's also an example of sharing, because what you can do is you can go on the website and then you can download different recipes for hands. You can get the exact instructions, so you could put it in a 3D printer and you can customize it to fit it exactly for that particular child. But it's all free and it's all open source. So you can even take the code and you can change it around and you can make it better if you want to, or if you can. It's also an example of this maker wave, because the central tool in this is the 3D printer. What happens is that around the world, communities that have access to a 3D printer, they will get together and they will meet, and then they will start to print out these recipes for the hands. So the thing is that you don't have to have a factory somewhere and then you have to distribute the handout. What you do is that you create the recipe and people can download it and they can make this quite advanced object anywhere in the world. So this is created by makers who volunteer to make a difference in the world. It's also an example of inclusivity, that people want to do something that's not just about making a lot of money, but it's about bringing the benefits of technology to people who might otherwise not have it. So the nice thing about this is that it costs very, very little. It costs about $35 in the material costs to print a hand like this. And of course, that's a lot cheaper than if you had to buy a real factory-made hand. And you can do it in places that are far away from the big towns. All you really need to have is an internet connection, and you need the printer, the 3D printer. And then you can bring this very advanced technologies everywhere. So you can see that these hands can be given to children who would otherwise not be able to have the help from such a hand. So it's a very good project in that sense. There's a final dimension of it, which is the circular economy, this idea that you use stuff that you can then reuse in other connections. One way of doing this would be, if you know about India. In India, there's a lot of collection of plastic waste. There's a whole industry of people who really, in fine detail, collect plastic. And now there is a project in India to collect some of this plastic and sort it very, very finely, and then create what's called the filament, which is basically what you use to print a 3D printed object. So in that sense, In the future, you could see how when you printed a 3D printed object, then if you don't need it anymore, you can just reuse it, create new plastic, and print another object. So it would also be a circular economy in that sense. So these are some examples of how you can see these trends playing out. Here's another example. It's a company in the United States and in Holland. It's called Shapeways. And they have a lot of things that they can sell to you. Many different kinds of objects. Jewelry, gadgets, cases for iPhones, stuff like that. And the interesting thing here is that this company has no designers employed. They have so many different things, but they don't design any of them themselves. What they do is that they have a lot of very advanced 3D printers. So they have a factory where you can print in many different materials. But what you print is basically what you want to print. The customers decide what to print. So what people do is that they will send the recipe to Shapeways, and Shapeways will print the object for them. But not only that, you can also, if you've designed something, we can see something that you think is very nice and that others might be interested in buying also. What you can do is you can create your own shop. So in this sense, Shapeway creates a platform. They say, we can print this stuff for you, and you can also become a designer and open your own design shop on our platform. So 40% of their sales are basically objects that other people go to the website and they see what someone else has created. They download that and they print it out via Shapeway's site. So this is a company that has so many different things, but they don't design any of them themselves. An interesting thing about this is that many of the objects that appear a place like this is that people want to create what's called fan art. A lot of people really like something called My Little Pony. Maybe your children are playing with My Little Pony also. It's from a big American toy company called Hasbro. And Shapeways usually would react if they see somebody wanting to print out a My Little Pony figure. They will say, oh, you can't do this because of copyright. And in that case, you're not co-creating at all. Basically, you're saying you cannot do this because we have the copyright. And now what Hasbro and Shapeways did, they cooperated and they said, you can create objects that are like My Little Pony. You can design your own My Little Pony, and we will say it's okay if you give us a little share of it. So in this case, you can see that a large company connected with their best fans who really want to create new objects that are like the objects that the company makes. And everybody basically gains from this. You get new ideas for My Little Pony, and you get fans who are more engaged in this object. So it's a win-win situation. The point here is that it's a different way of creating value than what you would have in a normal industrial setting. Because here you have fans who are actually creating the object that they are consuming. And you have a very large corporation that gets new idea directly from the fans who are using their products. And also you have a company which has a lot of different objects to sell, but no one designs it, only the customers themselves. So you can see that people are working together. This is what's called collective ingenuity. So we had these elements at play. Another example of a very large corporation that engages directly with just you and me and people who have a good idea is Ford Motor Company. As you probably know, in Detroit, there's been a lot of crisis. It's a very depressed area, and the people who live there are suffering from unemployment, and basically it's just a place where they need some new ideas. And what they've done in Detroit is they've created what's called a tech shop. And a tech shop is a wonderful place, I can tell you. It's the greatest maker lab you can think of. Lots of laser cutters and 3D printers and sewing machines and courses of all kinds. And what they do is that they've created this maker lab which is right next to the Ford Motor Company. So people who have ideas in this place and maybe unemployed or would like to create something new, they can go to the Maker Lab and they can start creating stuff. But also Ford uses it themselves for their employees. if they have a good idea and they just want to make a quick test or want to be somewhere where they're not in the official part of the factory, they can go to the tech shop and start working with people, and people will meet each other and new ideas will come up. So again, this is an example of co-creation, about collaborating to create things in new ways. So you can see that value is created in a different way than it used to be when it was only engineers and designers who were placed in a company. Here you can have a process that extends into the users. I showed you, this is the 3D printer. Of course, this is a very central tool to allow people to make stuff, because now you can design everything on a computer screen and you can print it out and you can collaborate, because when you have a digital file, of course, people can share it and they can modify it and they can send it around. So it's a beautiful thing in that sense. But there are other tools also that are really enabling people to participate in creation in new ways. This is a photograph. It's from the exhibition. You can go up and see it at the Waves exhibition. It's from a French biohacking lab. So not only do people print 3D objects, but also you see people starting to create new organisms, to create new kinds of biological things, new medicines, testing gear for working with biology. And this is very advanced, really. I don't know anything about it myself, so I'm quite amazed that it's possible. And the thing about it is that it's really a revolution in terms of what equipment is available to people. It used to be only 10 years ago that decoding DNA would be something that really required massive equipment, doctor degrees, but now you can see that even school children are starting to work with DNA in the schools. And one of the central pieces of equipment is what's called a PCR machine, which you use actually to decode a DNA. And now, because it's made as an open source project with a very, very simple, cheap recipe, this very advanced piece of machinery is now available for $650, and anyone can download it, and it's open source, and you can change it if you feel you have a better idea. A similar example is a balance, something that weighs very, very small amounts of particles, something that weighs down to a femtogram, which is unbelievably small. This piece of machinery would usually cost, I don't know, $100,000, but now an Italian project using what's called Arduino, which is like Legos for electronics, have created this very, very precise balance and made it available open source, and then you can create it for only $500. So what it does is it engages scientists, people who are interested in biology, in creating tools, and it makes the tools available to others so they can also be part of this creation process. So you can see that co-creation is coming down towards the bottom rather than only being up at the top. This is one of my favorite examples. It looks like, it doesn't look very good. What it is, it's from a place in Copenhagen which is called the Biology Garage, and where a lot of people meet just out of hobby to create different kinds of machinery. And one of the largest Danish companies which produces enzymes and biofuels, it's called Novozymes, they have placed a person there who goes there every week and has been doing that for 2 years. And now they have developed this detector for ethanol, which is a very important thing to have when you're creating biofuels. And it costs $30. And usually it would be like 1,000 times more expensive. And now Novozymes are testing this equipment, of course, in a nicer version than this, in their labs in the United States, to see if they can start using this process rather than buying a lot of those very, very expensive machines. So again, it's an example of involving a completely different layer of ideas and a different way of thinking in creating stuff that you would usually think was pretty high-tech. And I think it's very inspiring because it tells us that even if you don't have a lot of money, even if you just have a very good idea, it's possible to meet others and collaborate with them and create stuff that you can actually use to create large-scale industrial stuff of high quality. So this is the collective ingenuity, the 5 waves of that. I would like to go a little bit backwards and look at why is this happening now. And I think there are 3 really important trends that really are changing the way our economy works. The first one, these are not very, I mean, you all know these trends, but just want to point out why this is happening right now. The first one is connectivity. You all have a mobile phone in your pocket. Try to think back just a few years ago how much less you were connected than you are now. Now we have high-speed internet connections. We are connected everywhere. But it's not only people who are becoming connected, it's also the Internet of Things. It will be almost all objects, the bicycle, our shoes, the refrigerator, as we've seen some examples, that machines will start to talk to each other. So everything is becoming connected and interchanging information. And also when you create solutions, you can create solutions that address a whole system. So this is an important reason why we need collective innovation and collective ingenuity. The second factor is empowerment. I talked about how you could now get access to very, very advanced biological equipment. But of course, in a way, the most central tool in all of this is the iPad or the smartphone, that we are connected and we can now have a different role. If you compare it to watching television, in the old days, you would watch television and there would be somebody watching and there would be somebody broadcasting. They would be sending the message out. But now, if you have a smartphone or you have a tablet, you can become interactive. And this is very, very different. The people who are consuming it are also the people who are co-creating it. So we have a different role. We become participants in the project rather than only consumers. And this is how you can start mobilize people, because we have the tools to be participants. And first of all, of course, we have the 3D printer also, which makes it possible, even if you're not a very, very good handicraft person or a very good technician, you can actually just take a computer file and you can create a very advanced object. So we've become empowered. The third trend is coordination. Because we have all this information out there, we have all these resources, there's so many people who may know something, there may be a nice piece of machinery, but how do you remember this? How do you know what's where? You all know about big data, of course, because all these objects are collecting all the data all the time, but you need some way of coordinating it. And if you look at it, this is just amazing how well this is working now. Something like Google, who can create a solution for you. If you ask something from Google, you just make a search, they will know who you are probably, they will know where you are, they will know a little bit about your circumstances. They've built up a profile of you, they've found advertisers who have a product they would like to present to you. All of this comes together, bang, in one solution. So they coordinate all these resources, and they do that 3 billion times every day, and it takes a split second. So we have become very, very good at coordinating resources around us. And this is also a reason why it's possible to integrate so many new actors in creation and innovation. What all this adds up to is that we get a very different economy. You know, we went from agriculture, and then we made our way into the industrial economy. And in the industrial economy was that we made mass-produced objects. We had large factories. We had a producer who could develop everything, and then would sell it to consumers. But this chain is changing, and we're moving to a different kind of society. Just as agriculture is still very important, we all have to eat, of course, and agricultural production is as large as it ever was. But you cannot make so much money. It's not the central part of the economy anymore. We will see the same thing happening with the industrial logic and the industrial economy. This will be still very important. We all need cars and we all need stuff. But it will be a smaller part of the economy, and something else will come in place. And that something else will be characterized by this collective ingenuity that I'm talking about. So one thing that happens in industrial production is that if you start out, if you're a company, you develop a really nice camera. And maybe in the beginning you have this technology to yourself, because not everybody can make a very advanced camera. So you can charge a high price for it, and customers really like your object rather than the old-fashioned stuff. But what happens is that after a while the technology matures, and suddenly everybody can create a camera. Suddenly everybody can make the same features, and they all look the same, and they're all pretty good. And the only way that you can compete in a situation where the technology you're using is mature is on price. And this is not a very good game to be in, because what you want to do is you want to have something that's different, that you can charge a lot extra for. But if you're creating digital cameras like this, it's just very, very hard to make a difference. And the reason why it's hard to make a difference is that in the beginning, the technology you have, you can really improve it a lot. You put money into developing, and it becomes a lot better. So you go from 2 megapixels to 4 megapixels to 8 megapixels, and every time you do it, the photograph just becomes so much better. But after a while, when you reach, 20 megapixels or 24 megapixels, the consumers don't really care if you have 48 or 500 megapixels. It doesn't matter. I just want to take good photos, and 24 megapixels is just fine. I can take the best photos I want. So you have to understand that from a consumer's point of view, after a certain point, one product is as good as the next one. And then you have to find out, how can I make a difference? Well, you could try to make more megapixels, but it'll cost you a fortune, because the technology is very hard to get any more features out of. So you need to look for something else. And I'll show you an example of this, because you have to maybe think in terms of what can I do for the customers to get what they want. They want to take good pictures. Well, maybe you should teach them to take good pictures. Maybe you should create online galleries sharing. What I'm saying is that on top of the physical product, you can create something else which may add a lot of value to the consumer, but which is not in the physical product. This is a thermostat. It's a Danish thermostat. One of the largest companies in Denmark is called Danfoss, and it has, for 50 years, it's produced thermostats. And a thermostat is really a quite simple technology, but when it was launched 50 years ago, the company had it more or less to themselves. But these days, any Chinese company, it's not a very advanced technologies in 2015, of course. So the problem for this company is that what can they do? The only thing they can do is that they can produce the thermostats as cheaply as possible. And this is not a very fun game. Then suddenly comes another company, and this is an American company. It's the people who actually used to work for Apple and designed the iPod. They have also designed a thermostat. And this thermostat basically does the same thing. It keeps a constant temperature, but this thermostat is smart. It's smart in the sense that it has a built-in computer, so it can learn who's in the room, what are the habits of the people who live in the room. And another thing about this object is that it's connected. So it's on the Internet of Things. So it can connect to Windows, it can connect to your car, to your refrigerator. And I'd like to show a small video that illustrates what the difference between an old-fashioned thermostat and this new thermostat is. Can you please show the video? I hope this works. It's always a little bit exciting. Well, nice and relaxing.
Say you have a smart light bulb. It's smart because you can control it from your phone. You can turn it off or on. Maybe change the color. That's cool. But add more smart products around the house? And without Nest, getting them to work together practically requires an engineering degree. And what works with one phone might not work with another. Ugh, that's confusing. Shouldn't home automation make life easier? That's why Nest does things differently. You can control Nest products from most smartphones, but they also use sensors and algorithms to learn about you. They're saving energy in millions of homes around the world. They're keeping families safe. They can even let you know when something happens, without you having to program them. They also talk to each other. Like when Nest Protect senses carbon monoxide. Your Nest Learning thermostat can automatically turn off your furnace, which might be the culprit. Now with Works with Nest, other products around the house can work the same way. They can take what Nest knows and start doing new things they never could before. So that light bulb can help get your attention when Nest Protect senses smoke. Or help scare away intruders if Nest Cam senses someone lurking around. Your dryer can learn from Nest and automatically run the next load when energy demand is low, which could help save on your energy bill. And your door lock can let you know who's there, even if you aren't home to greet them. You probably already own something that works with Nest.
Good. The reason why I was showing this video is to illustrate the difference between what we're coming from and what we're moving to. The old thermostat is an industrial object. It's mass-produced and it does one thing and it works on its own. But the value that you get from this new thermostat comes not just from that it's a thermostat. There's even more value because it connects to all the other things. And this value that then you can add, this is where the innovation is. This value emerges because a lot of different things work together. So the new kind of value that we will be living from in the post-industrial economy is a value that's co-created with a lot of different players. So you have a product, and then what you do is you add something else. You add the ability to involve users so they can program it. You add the ability so it can talk to your refrigerator, or you can use it from your car, or you can save the data and you can exchange it with someone else. So you add this new layer on top of the product. And what you then do is that this new layer, this superstructure that you create, you share it with others. So this thermostat can now talk with the data that are being generated by the heater in the house or by the refrigerator, etc. So the idea is that new value is created when a lot of different things can be coordinated and make to work together. And this is the way you can create something new. I talked about how you could not really change the camera because more megapixels doesn't work. And you cannot create a thermostat that's more precise. Who cares if it's 21.5 or if it's 21.3? It doesn't really matter to the user. What matters to the user is that you get new solutions, and those solutions come because you make the thermostats able to communicate with a lot of different devices, and then you can co-create solution with those devices. So this idea that many things are interacting is very, very central to how we can create new value and innovate new solutions that will get us beyond the industrial economy. So if you have the old product, the thermostat, this is becoming a commodity. You can only compete on price. And basically, you can create a factory and you can automate the production, or you can outsource this to Bangladesh or somewhere where it's really, really cheap to produce. This is not how you can create a new economy. This is not what most of us will be doing. This is not where the jobs are for the future. Where the new economy is happening is by creating these new services on top and connecting them with other objects. This is where this is a part of the economy where we will see the future innovation, where we will see growth, and where most of us will be working. We will not be working in factories because factories will be automated and they will be robotized and they will be not so good jobs. But the good jobs are in finding out how can we make things interact in new ways. And the nice thing about this is that this is also really important because the old way of doing things, just creating products and selling more products that are just a little bit better than they used to be, is not the kind of solutions we need for the situations that the world is in right now. You live in Istanbul, you know what a traffic jam is like. This is the old solution. You would sell a car. If you wanted to go from one point to another, you would get a car. But everybody gets a car. You know, we can't, our mobility is not getting better, it's getting worse. So then what can you do if you can't make the car better? It doesn't really matter if you have a bigger engine in your car. It's not going to get you any faster through Istanbul's traffic jams. So what you want to do is you want to think, can I create something else, a superstructure on top of my industrial product? And this is what the company called BlaBlaCar, it's here, it's the same thing as Uber also. The idea is that you share cars. That if you are going somewhere, you can ask others on this website if they want to join you, and they can pay a little bit of it. So you get fewer cars on the road, and you get cheaper rides for everybody involved. And also, there's a social element of this. You're not just sitting there in your car, you're talking to somebody else, you're meeting new people. So it's a way of creating a solution, but it's not by making a bigger engine. It's by involving new players in creating the value that you want to achieve, better mobility. So I hope you understand that this is by involving the users themselves, by sharing resources, you can create something that solves the problem. So we have co-creation. These are users who create a solution for themselves. It's not a company that's providing it. The company only creates a platform that makes people meet. And it's inclusive because the prices are lower, and it's sharing because you're sharing the resources, so you don't have to have a car, every person. So this is a model, and it's a very, very different model from a usual company. In the industrial age, you would have a company that would produce a car. BlaBla doesn't produce anything. BlaBlaCar is a platform. So BlaBlaCar only produces connections. BlaBlaCar coordinates resources and creates value this way. They don't have to own anything. This would be the first stage, that you have a platform in the middle and you have some drivers. But actually what you want, and I think we will see this, would be the next stage, is that it's not only BlaBlaCar, but it's also the trains, and it's the planes, and it's the bicycles and the cars, and everybody is contributing and have resources available. So if I need to go from my home in Denmark to Istanbul, maybe I want to know about what are the bus connections, what are the cars available, can I get a ride somewhere, what time does the plane leave, what happens when I get to Turkey, this and that. I need a complete solution. And this is the value that I want as a customer. So now if you say you put me in the middle in the situation I'm in right now, in reality what I'll be using is not just one product. I'll be using many, many different things. And if some company can find out how to coordinate all these resources so I get the cheapest and most comfortable solution that fits me right here and now, this is a way of creating new value that makes the most of the resources that are out there. And it's co-created by many different players. So this is an example of a new way of creating value. If you look at energy, it used to be that if you wanted to sell energy to consumers, you would create a big, fat, central power plant. And you just broadcast energy into homes and consumers and everybody who needed energy. But the problem is that today, you cannot just keep building coal-fired power plants. We have to do something else if we want to provide energy. We have to create an energy solution. It's not about the electricity or the heating. It's about what solution I get from using the energy. So here's another model. Now, rather than having, you can see, you have the old energy provider in the middle. But now the new model, and this is a non-industrial model, of course, is that you involve me. I have to change my way of using energy, because otherwise there's not enough energy. I have to go and put insulation in my house to make it more energy efficient. Maybe you have to make me invest in putting solar panels on the rooftop in my house, so I become a producer, which I am. I have solar cells on top of my house, so now suddenly I produce electricity myself. It's not just somebody there in the middle, it's also me producing it. It's windmills. It's all kinds of stuff that together fits into the solution that we want to create now. So the kinds of solutions that we will see in the coming economy are more complex, and they consist of many more players who have to work together. And the idea here is that it's a mindset. If you are a company, you need to change your way of thinking from thinking, I produce products. Here's a car, here's some energy. Rather, what you do is, I want to create an outcome, a result that is what the consumer needs. And to do that, you have to think differently, because then you have to start creating processes. You have to enable cooperation and interaction to create these outcomes. So it's basically, if you think about how does value happen, it's about all these things coming together. I need a solution for my mobility. I need an education. This is where I am, this is what I know, this is my job, this is how much money I have. It all comes together. Some of it is from the net, some from a school, somebody who helps me from work, etc. So we can see in healthcare, in education, many different things. It's always about bringing more players into creating value. And this is a little bit, it's a little bit like the solar system. It used to be that people thought that the Earth was in the middle of the universe, and then the planets and the sun was rotating around the globe. But actually what is happening is that we're moving from a situation where companies think that they are in the middle of the solar system. I'm producing this car and I'm sending it out, the same car out to all the consumers. But the new system is where suddenly the car manufacturer is not in the middle of the system. The consumer, the outcome, what you really want is in the middle, and the car it becomes one of a number of different possibilities that all can interact to create the solution I need. So as a company in this kind of situation, you need to understand that the value that you provide depends on how well can you connect. Do you know what the others are doing? So you can hook up, so you can exchange data, so you can create solutions together with the others. So you may not think you're in the same business as trains or bicycles, but for the consumer, it's all about mobility. So you are just one of a number of players who are contributing to the mobility that the consumer wants. So you have to change your mindset. Your value is not yourself, you're not alone. The value that you create depends on how well you interact with everybody else. And the central thing about here, this is what's called the platforms. We talked a lot about platforms, Airbnb and these things. And platforms don't own things, but platforms are the companies that can organize this. Airbnb, they don't own any hotel rooms. They just organize that people have a room and somebody needs a room, and they get it all together. It's exactly the same thing with hotels.com, only now the hotels are really hotels, but it's the same idea. Hotels.com is a platform that organizes this. So platforms coordinate external resources. They don't have the resources themselves. They don't own the factory. They don't have the employees. And they enable co-creation. So they make it possible for this to happen. And they integrate across categories. Even though they're very, very different players, they can make them all work together. So this is a very, very central thing. And what it does is it gives new roles. This is a different way of co-creating things. You have somebody who used to be a producer and somebody who used to be only a consumer, but now they are working together and creating solutions. And it requires that the producer starts to open up for the consumer, but also that consumer realize that you can do it too. You can be part of specifying the solution you want. And a company is not just itself. Value doesn't all happen in the company. Value is created outside the company. So it's created in collaboration with many others in a community. And basically, what's happening is that we're moving from a situation where it used to be that I can do everything and I'm only thinking about my own success. But if you want to play this game in the new economy that's connected, where people are empowered, and where you coordinate, it's not enough to think about yourself. what you can do depends very much on what you can do with the others that you're working with. So it's an acknowledgement that you are interdependent and you use these different mechanisms to create larger value, but the value is created with others. So it's from me to we. And that's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.